Okay, let's talk strengthening the mind techniques. For lots of you out there, I think you're probably looking for inspiration, methods, practices to strengthen your resolve, your character, your mindset. Quite often I would imagine you overwhelm yourselves with the various ideas that are out there, when really there are some really simple methods and simple techniques. Recently I've been listening to Goggins, David Goggins that is, and if you don't know who he is, do look him up, do look up his story, have a listen to his Audible book. I say that because he's done something a little bit different. He's created an Audible book that is in part podcast, part story. Now what he talks about is a callousing of the mind. And what he means by that is, if you look at Muay Thai fighters, if you look at various other martial artists, they quite often will callous their bones in order to toughen their bones. And they'll do that by kicking their leg against a palm tree or something like that. And it works. You develop these calluses, these extra growths of bone, on top of the bone, and it strengthens the bone. So I like his analogy here that he talks about callousing the brain, callousing the mind. But really what he's talking about here is strengthening the mind. And a lot of people, I think, look to physical activities to strengthen the mind, when you don't necessarily need to do that. Really, the real way to strengthen your mind, I've found, is to do the things you don't want to do. So when you're at your weakest, you make yourself do the thing that is the last thing you want to do at that particular moment. And for me, the quickest and easiest thing that I can do on a day-to-day basis is to embrace the cold. And I know I've mentioned this on numerous occasions. I talk about it a shed load. You thought I was going to say another word there, didn't you? And but in my mind, aside from all the other benefits about embracing the cold, one of the key reasons I do it, and something that I can do every day, is because I have this, nowadays it's just a slight wrestling with my mind, because certainly in the summer months there is no wrestling. I know that by going out and grabbing the hose and using the cold water on my body to wash me down in the garden, it's a good feeling. I don't have any kind of wrestling in my mind to do that thing. But in the winter months, and now it's about 0 degrees today, going out into the garden at the time that I do, around 5:30, I'm getting into the minus numbers. And so there is a thought that enters my mind. There is this momentary message that says, it just questions what I'm doing. But I find it pretty easy now to override that message. But certainly, as I say, in the colder months, I do still get that message. But in overriding that message, and I know that Tony Robbins talks about this every day, because he uses a cold plunge. He has one in his house. So every morning he gets into the cold plunge. And, he says that his mind will quite often say, don't do it today. You're feeling a bit rubbish today. Don't bother. But he makes himself do it. And in doing that, he knows that he's callousing the mind. He's strengthening the mind. Because if you do this every day, this simple practice of doing the thing that you don't want to do, or at least offering a counter argument to a message that your monkey mind is saying to you, you end up strengthening your mind. And I think what you start doing is befriending that monkey mind. You make a friend with it. And the more you do that, the more you're going to strengthen your mind. And what happens is that this filters into other areas of your life. So other times, other occasions when your monkey mind will kick in and it will say, don't do that today, you don't need to. You will, after a period of time, you will start getting a counter argument that just happens naturally. It's like a subconscious reaction. So that's the reason why I do this. Simply making that decision in saying to yourself, no, I'm going to stick with the plan. I'm going to continue doing what I said I was going to do. I'm going to commit to this. You end up strengthening the mind. So it's all very well signing up for a 50K ultra, 100K ultra, various other challenges that we all set ourselves nowadays. I certainly did in my 20s and 30s. And in doing those challenges, you are playing with your mind. You are challenging your mind to do these things that are going to be tough. But you don't need to do that. Not to that extent. I mean, I applaud you if you do, and they're really good things to do, especially if you're doing them for charity. And indeed, I would imagine I'll probably do more. But what I'm saying here is that, yes, you could do that. And yes, that will help. But you don't necessarily need to. It's a bit like the whole exercise thing. I've done a video I'll do some more on this actually. I've done a video on something called high intensity incidental physical activity. And really the message there is that you don't have to think about exercise. You don't have to, if exercise itself, the term exercise, the meaning behind exercise puts you off exercise, you don't have to do that. You only have to figure out your day as a means of raising your heartbeat, say 3 or 4 times a day. So it could just mean taking the stairs when you could have taken the escalator. It could just mean when you're cooking, getting down and do a few press-ups or squats. So in other words, you don't have to go to the whole rigmarole of figuring out when to go to the gym, whether you should buy any kit, whether you should have to change your clothes. You don't have to do any of that. This is what makes it so simple. And so this is my point here. When it comes to strengthening your mind, make it simple. Make the task that you know will work in strengthening your mind, make that simple. Because then it becomes easier to do on a day-to-day basis. So therefore that brief moment of a counter-argument or the brief moment of wrestling with your mind is that much easier, knowing that this simple task can be done quickly, even if it's going to hurt, even if it's going to even if it's going to be a little bit tricky. You know that it's going to be over quickly and you can move on with your day, knowing that you've gained a psychological template. And that's also what we're talking about here. Your mind, as you know already, is plastic. There is this term neuroplasticity, and what it means is that even as you get older, the traditional thinking was that as you get older, your brain started to diminish, which is absolute rubbish. You can keep developing your brain. I know I have over the last couple of years. You can strengthen your brain. You can have new neurons connect to each other. And a really simple way to kickstart a lot of that is to work on these strengthening techniques. So I would recommend a simple task today of either embracing the cold, or if you don't want to do that, when you're faced with something that you don't want to do, override it. Make yourself do it so that the next day, when that happens, you do the same thing again. And what you'll find is, without thinking about it, other things will start to fall into place. There'll be other moments where immediately you'll get the message of don't do this, it's too hard, and then you'll get the counter argument just happening. And you'll make yourself do it. And you'll feel like you're making a better version of yourself. So there we go. That's my message for today. I hope that helps for some of you. Keep it simple, but do work on strengthening your mind. You're going to gain. Evolution of Dave signing off. Thank you for watching.